Welcome to the Mindful Healers podcast with Dr. Jessie Mahoney.
And Dr. Ni-Cheng Liang.
We are physicians and leaders who are also trained in coaching, yoga, mindfulness, and integrative medicine.
We are also mothers, spouses, sisters, daughters, aunts, and friends.
In this podcast, we share candid, heart-centered, loving, science-based, thoughtful, and often fun conversations about the challenges life throws at us.
With our collective experience of over 30 years in physician and personal wellness, we reflect and offer pearls of wisdom for navigating life's challenges with more ease.
From parenting, marriages, money scarcity, cancer survivorship, uncertainty, challenges in practicing medicine, we cover it all.
We invite you to refresh your perspective and empower yourself with mindset, mindfulness, and other well-being tools that actually work. A quick reminder that nothing in our podcast is medical advice.
Today's podcast is a last-minute addition to our Women in Medicine series, and I am going to share helpful insights for high-achieving professional women who are navigating neurodiverse relationships. I hope to offer you some tools to navigate these relationships with more insight and compassion as a Valentine's Day gift. Do you wonder why so many high-achieving professional women find themselves in relationships with neurodivergent men, very often without even realizing it? Why do we have a tendency to fall in love with neurodiverse men? What do we find attractive and what feels good? What are the biggest recurrent pain points we encounter in these relationships? And what can we do to move beyond them? Key takeaways: you do not have to understand each other to love one another and have a healthy and rewarding relationship. Changing your lens and choosing to step out of victimhood changes everything. And recognizing your other-oriented perfectionism and choosing to let go of your desire to change your partner is liberating. So, at the outset, I just want to say that I am speaking to women who find themselves in relationships with men who have ADD, ADHD, autism, Asperger's, have any tendencies towards potentially being on the spectrum. And I share this wisdom today from a place of love. And as someone who has been in a neurodiverse loving relationship for 40 years, as it turns out, and I didn't know that I was in one of these relationships until about 30 years in. And had I known, and had I had some of the information I'm going to share with you today, I would have had a lot less bumps. And just so you know, as I know many of you are potentially researchers. Once you discover that this might be the kind of relationship you're in, you research it and you research it and you learn and you try to find the solutions, you try to change it and you try to fix it. I read early on 27 to 30 books on the topic, trying to find my own solutions. And while I learned a lot and I gained a lot of insight, I really found my and our solutions in coaching and in my own experience of coach training, and I've now done 3 of them, and in mindset work and in mindfulness. And I want to offer some of those learnings today with the hope that I will save you some frustration and resentment and sadness and grief. And I'm going to begin here by sharing some insight into why high-achieving women often find themselves attracted to or in loving relationships with neurodiverse men. And it's not by accident. And interestingly, I work with many, many women, especially women physicians, who find themselves in these relationships and they find themselves frustrated. And we don't even recognize how we ended up here. And that's part of the frustration. We also don't realize we are part of a quite large community where we could support each other and share wisdom and lean on each other. And I strongly encourage those of you who find yourselves in frustrating relationships, such as this type, or really any type of frustrating love relationship, find a community, join small group coaching. It makes an incredible difference. Come to a retreat and discover that you are not alone. Because one of our default thought patterns that causes us the most pain is that we are alone in these struggles. And so we tend to hook up, connect with, partner with men who are neurodiverse, and potentially women too. I just don't have the experience of coaching that many people in those relationships. So what I'm really looking at is why high achieving women tend to find themselves in these neurodiverse relationships. We also then tend to have children who also are neurodiverse because we have partners who are neurodiverse. But we choose these partners for actually incredibly good reasons. And recognizing why you chose your partner is very helpful. You are an extremely smart woman and you actually have your own back and want to biologically support yourself to live a life that works. And we have many complementary strengths and shared values with neurodiverse men. It's like we're two puzzle pieces that fit together. And the complementary piece of our strengths is incredibly important. If we had different values, it wouldn't work. If we had the same strengths, it wouldn't work. And so recognizing that these two pieces are actually can be a source of strength if you acknowledge them and appreciate them. So neurodivergent partners tend to bring creativity to a relationship. They tend to bring unique problem-solving skills. They tend to hyper-focus rather than be responsible for all the things out on the external. They also are willing to not be the leader in a relationship. They're willing to not be the emotional leader and the one who plans and chooses and makes decisions. They're willing to let you do that. They are also exceptionally good at being present and being in the moment. They stay out of the worry about what's going to happen ahead. They stay out of the regret about what happened in the past. They're very practical and pragmatic. This complements the high-achieving woman who, like me, tends to be structured and goal-oriented and highly efficient and has exceptional executive function and many, many social skills. The beautiful thing about these different complementary strengths, which feels really good to high-achieving women, is that there is no competition in these relationships. In fact, neurodivergent men tend to just stay out of the competition. And for those of us who are out there in the world, being perhaps physicians in male-dominated specialties, this feels really good. We have enough competition out there, and we certainly don't need it at home, in the bedroom, or in our marriages, or in our families. So it functionally works to have these different strengths. It functionally works to have people who are different. Imagine if there were two of you who wanted to do things your way, who thought your way was the right way, who wanted to plan the vacations and be the emotional leader of the family. That would never work. Very often, in fact, neurodiverse partners or neurodivergent partners, whichever language you like to use, are willing to be a non-traditional partner. They're willing to potentially be a stay-at-home partner. They're willing to not take the lead. They're willing and happy to be a supportive partner who follows you and is your biggest cheerleader. We don't find that in all relationships. And so I think that while we may not recognize these as the exact strengths we're looking for, we do have an intuitive sense. Things feel right. And that's how we end up in these relationships without knowing it. We also tend to have a balance of interests. We are interested in some things, they are interested in some things. It doesn't matter what they are, but recognizing that actually balance and different interests and different spaces can allow you to grow if you don't resist it. If you think you have to do the same things all the time, and you think you have to be good at things, and you think you have to like the same social spaces, that can be very painful. And I will say that recently, my husband actually said to me that we have potentially no overlapping skills. And while maybe initially that strikes you as odd in a relationship, having no overlapping skills means you have a lot of skills covered. There's a lot of depth and breadth to things, and you can each stay in your own lane. And that this can actually serve you really, really well. And I have come to realize recently that this is probably why my husband and I are willing to work together and can work together so functionally, because our skills are very different. We appreciate um, now with intention what each of us brings, and to be able to admire that and not have any competition there is really phenomenally important. So the next piece is shared values, which is also critical. And I think that that's a reason why we tend to gravitate towards one another. We both tend to value independence. We both tend to value authenticity. We both tend to value individuality. We both tend to value non-traditional gender roles. We both tend to value more egalitarian relationships. And in my opinion, neurodivergent partners tend to be more egalitarian. They tend to have a more practical, pragmatic approach to relationships, gender roles, and getting things done. And that can be very appealing and attractive to a high achieving woman who has plans and places to go. Keep in mind that neurodivergent partners can entertain themselves perfectly happily while you are in medical school and in residency and doing your job. They are fine being alone and working on their own things, and they don't have that resentment and frustration towards you. That actually can be quite helpful. They also tend to be extremely loyal. And for someone who's gone a lot and busy working and potentially traveling or spending nights in the hospital, having a loyal partner is a beautiful thing. Having someone who has unwavering support for you can be really pretty magical and very helpful when you are working in spaces where there is often not unwavering support. It feels really good. Neurodivergent partners tend to be incredibly direct and honest, potentially to a fault, but they tell it like it is. You don't have to be sort of trying to figure out the underlying theme and what they might think and all of these things. You can trust them. You can trust that they're going to tell you what they think, good or bad. And that can be really refreshing and a relief. They also tend to be predictable. And that can be a relief. Many of us have unpredictable schedules, and trying to predict how they might react to something can add a whole other layer of exhaustion when we are already quite exhausted and depleted. And so recognizing that it's fantastic to have a loyal, direct, honest, predictable partner in many ways. It comes with other things, but these are qualities that make a great partner. They make a great co-parent, and they can be really, really helpful if you are a high achieving woman who is successful on the surface. Now, other reasons lead us to struggle underneath, and I'm going to give you some tips to struggle less underneath. And that's, I think, where we will turn now. So as many of you know, I tend to coach women who are successful on the surface, yet struggle underneath. And we struggle underneath for reasons that we resist these relationships. We want them to be different. We are optimizers and fixers, managers, controllers, and we are someone who likes to be in charge and likes to be in control and is usually very successful at changing things. One of the absolute biggest pain points in these relationships, and it was for me too, is that while we love the above characteristics I mentioned, we also still think we can optimize our partner. We find ourselves frustrated over time by their lack of executive function and maybe their lack of social skills, and maybe they don't join us at parties and they don't talk to us enough and they don't respond in the way that we would like them to. We can be frustrated by their efficiency or their abilities to connect, and recognizing that they want individuality. They want to be unique. They want to do things differently. They want to do things their own way, just like us. Now, This becomes frustrating when we have children and there's more demands. And this is usually when the struggle tends to grow because they are not approaching things in the way that we would. Of course, they're not, because they're neurodivergent, and we're usually neurotypical if we're in a neurodiverse relationship. And the pain comes literally from our lack of acceptance of our partners as they are and our desire to change them. And if we can decide that we're not going to change them, because actually we're not, it's probably the one place in life where you just can't succeed in changing them, just like we can't succeed in changing our mothers or our children, our partners similarly. And for me, the easiest way to step out of this desire was to remember that I do not want to be changed. I do not want to change the way that my husband would say, I would like you to do X, Y, and Z, and I would like you to be happy not doing these things, and I would like you to respond in this way, or I would like you to not want to talk things through. He has said that, by the way, and I don't want to change. And so to expect that he would change to meet my needs doesn't make sense. And I think if you can get back to the complementary strengths, and that it wouldn't be fantastic to have two of you, and that you don't want to be changed, it is a lot easier to let go of this idea that we want them to change, and to lean into acceptance. You can accept and wish that they could do X, Y, or Z, and whatever you can't do and they can't do, accept that situation. Accept literally them as they are and your marriage as it is. And when you do that, you can drop into problem solving and use your incredible problem solving skills for you. That's where you can get the help that you need. You can see the missing links and the things that need some glue and get help with that. So if you can stop helping or improving or changing and leaning into loving and appreciating and connecting, much of the struggle will wash away. The other thing I just wanted to say is remembering that our desire to change them comes from our attachment to perfectionism. We have incredibly high standards for ourselves, and we have something, most of us, called other-oriented perfectionism, where we want our other partners to also want to perform at the highest level and want to perform in the same ways that we do. When we can drop that other-oriented perfectionism, because just like that perfectionism harms us, as we often talk about in this podcast, other-oriented perfectionism harms our relationships. We can enjoy things. So if we can, instead of focusing on what our partner lacks and what they don't do well, appreciate what they do well, appreciate the unique strengths that they bring to your relationship, and non-judgmentally let go of who brings what and what's more valuable and all of those things, you can actually enjoy your relationship. Lean into what they offer and out of what they lack. So the corollary to this is a decision, a choice to step out of victimhood. Step out of being a victim as a partner and step out of being a victim of a neurodiverse marriage. It's so easy to drop into that. But when you can remember that your neurodiverse marriage is not broken, it's just different. And actually what your experience is experiencing is likely what your partner is experiencing moving through the world differently. So it's actually a clue into how they feel when you drop into this victimhood of why don't people understand why my marriage doesn't look like someone else's marriage, or my relationship doesn't look like someone else's relationship. If you recognize that it doesn't need to look like anyone else's to be fulfilling, it's way better. Thinking about how it's not broken, it's different, and it will always be different. And in fact, if you can recognize that your partner is not broken, they are just different, that's where you get your power, your choice, and your agency back. Your marriage and your love is just as valid, and it doesn't need to match anyone else's. And as a high achieving woman, we actually don't let the fact that that's how it's supposed to be or that's how it was get in our way. And so if you can bring that same lens to your marriage, you're just creating something different. It's going to look different. It's going to feel different, but it can also be fine. And that's the stepping out of judgment. Telling generous, intentional stories about the things that do work can actually lead to more things that work. So The other part two, as I like to think of it, of the biggest pain point is the belief that they need to understand us and we need to understand them. We need to understand each other to have a healthy marriage. And by virtue of your neurodiversity, you will not understand each other. Your brains work differently, they run differently. And this desire to understand each other causes so much pain, usually on the part of the neurotypical high achieving female who is thinking, I have to understand. We want to understand. If I just understood, things would be better. We probably cannot understand. And point of fact, they can probably not understand us. They are okay with not understanding because they don't understand how a lot of things work because their brain works differently. And they're just like, I don't get why that people think like this. I don't get why they move like this. And so it's usually us that needs to change on this one. So our stories that we are unseen, we're misunderstood, and we feel terrible. But point of fact, our partners are misunderstood by us and by the world in general. And we don't have to be a victim of that. We can let go of the need to understand because this desire to be understood and understand leads us to feel lonely, resentful, and like a victim. Doesn't help us. And so if instead we can literally let go of this attachment to having to understand and just trust and believe, which as most of you who listen to this podcast know is hard, that we would have chosen a good person for the most part, and that we can trust and believe them, remembering that for the most part, neurodivergent men are honest, they're direct, they'll tell you, and very often they tell you exactly what they want, and we don't listen. This was me. I have been told numerous times by my husband that I've told you that, or he tells exactly what he wants and I don't listen, or I want to understand the why before I'll do it. And if you can trust and believe in your relationship and your love and your complementary strengths and your shared values, things will go a lot better. So, a few more tips and tools before I wrap this up. What can you do if you want a stronger relationship? What can you do if you want to move beyond the frustration, resentment, anger, disappointment, and victimhood and into a relationship where there's more connection and you potentially feel better? So, because we are problem solvers and optimizers, we want things to be better. So, here are a few things that you can change, not your partner, and not the dynamics of your marriage, but what can you do to help make it better? So my number one is an ongoing theme in this podcast: regulate your nervous system, practice mindfulness, practice pausing and breathing, practice yoga, restorative yoga, meditation, use an app. I don't care what you do, but do something to take good care of your nervous system. Could be nature, could be a walk, but upregulate your parasympathetic nervous system. Try to stay out of your cortisol, reactive, sympathomimetic storm, because when we show up reactive, that's the energy we bring, and it doesn't help. Showing up with strategic mindfulness, that philosophic mindfulness that I often teach and talk about in coaching and at retreats and in my talks, leaning into not only acceptance, which is part of mindfulness, and we talked about that already, and not only letting go of the need to understand, but leaning into patience and leaning into non-judgment. Our way is one way, and I will add one right way because we're the high achieving woman, but it's not the only right way. And so we can step out of scarcity and lean into there are many right ways potentially. And it doesn't have to be a struggle or a tug of war, just there are many right ways. We can lean into curiosity and shift out of being furious. So curious, not furious, and letting go of the blame and instead asking good questions. What would love do? What would kindness do? I wonder why. Or you can just drop into I have no idea why. Again, staying out of understanding. You can also grow your capacity for flexibility and acceptance, not only by the mindfulness and not only by training your nervous system to be less reactive, but making sure you're not on empty, making sure you have strategies and tools to replenish and replete yourself. So being a part of a community, getting coached, doing things that energize you, potentially time in nature, taking a pause, hanging out with friends. Do more of the things that help you feel replenished and replete so you're not on empty. Because when you're on empty, you're more reactive. And as anyone in a neurodiverse relationship knows, when we're more reactive, it's not a good thing. We can also choose to pay attention on purpose, another mindfulness tool. What you pay attention to is your life. So focus on the things I mentioned about your similarities, your shared values, what you both want, and your complementary skills can be incredibly powerful. You likely both want the same things. That's the shared values, but you just have different ideas and ways to get there. You can also adjust your expectations and recognizing that our super high expectations don't help us. You don't have to have no expectations, but have reasonable expectations or have expectations of the marriage that you have and the partner that you have. Accept their strengths, accept their weaknesses, accept your strengths and your weaknesses. And you will still have challenges because that is the nature of neurodiverse marriages. And in fact, I will say that the studies show that like 95% of them fail. With these tools, I actually expect that you may not fail, and you may be able to find love and get back to those incredible positive things about these partnerships, which are out there. Our job is to make the situation not harder than it has to be. So a couple more tools that you can do to help smooth the bumps in your marriage and show up with compassion and kindness. You can bathe your brain in positivity. Pay attention to what's working, celebrate the ways that your partner expresses love, acknowledge the strengths that they bring to the table, and offer appreciation. Neurodivergent individuals receive a ton of negative feedback and very little positive feedback. Positive reinforcement can be transformative. And I bet that your partner has asked for this and you're not exceptional at giving it. High achieving women, we tend to not dish out compliments. We don't get very much appreciation ourselves, and we don't get very many compliments. So when we're all feeling not appreciated, it doesn't help. You can also commit to, I like to say, compassionate communication. That does not mean understanding. It means listening and accepting. You don't have to understand. It doesn't have to make sense to you. It also means that they don't have to understand and it doesn't have to make sense to them. And if this goes both ways, it's incredibly powerful. You can also reframe challenges as differences, not deficits, differences. And this can let go of the judgment and make things so much better. So as I end, a few final thoughts. Neurodiverse relationships are challenging, but they can be deeply rewarding when you approach them with mindfulness and intention, and when you set yourself up for success. Don't expect ease, but don't make things harder than they have to be. Remember, you do not have to understand, but you do have to accept. And then I thought for fun, I'd bring in some helpful C words. I heard someone refer to a previous podcast and they loved, I gave a bunch of P's. So here I'm going to give a bunch of C's. Choose love, hope, and proactive strategies over frustration, regret, and victimhood. You are not a victim. You chose your partner for many good reasons, and they do balance you out in many ways. Two of you would not be good. And then support yourself well with community, friends, coaching groups, come to a retreat. Support yourself well with coaching, yet another C, to navigate this journey with confidence, another C. Lean into calming practices, another C, to take good care of your nervous system, replete yourself, care for yourself as well. Be curious, another C, and communicate with compassion. Ask, what would love do? Love would, if you are in a neurodiverse relationship, lean into what I've shared above. Love would set yourself up for success with coaching. And I say this not as a marketing tool, but because I would not be where I am without coaching, and we would not be where we are in our relationship were it not for me getting coaching. And this is not therapy. We actually didn't do any marriage therapy because it's pretty well known that in neurodiverse relationships, traditional marriage therapy makes things worse, not better. And that when you can just lean into what you bring to a relationship and what you bring to a situation, which is what coaching is all about, that's where you can find tools that work. So I wish for all of you to dive into embracing your relationship for what it is: unique, complex, and full of potential. If this podcast inspired you, please go to my website, check out the things that I offer. Consider doing one-on-one coaching. It is much cheaper than divorce. It's much cheaper than the physiologic consequences of all the stress. Imagine a life with a lot less arguing. Imagine a life where you appreciate your partner and they appreciate you. Imagine a life where you're not making things harder. I just can't emphasize enough how powerful this is. At some point, I will offer Mindful Love, my small group coaching again. Or if you are a woman in medicine, join me for a retreat. It will be one of the most valuable, cost-effective things you have ever done. So I wish you all much love and more ease ahead. May you be well. May you be safe. May you love mindfully and intentionally. And may you find ease and contentment. And if you can't find those in your marriage, may you move forward with grace and compassion and love towards something that works better for you. Thanks so much for listening. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thanks so much for joining us.
We encourage you to dive into the show notes for each episode for more learnings and resources.
We also invite you to take a listen to the many other Mindful Healers podcast episodes. And please share the podcast far and wide with colleagues, friends, and family.
If our message and approach resonate with you, we would love to work with you.
When you listen to a podcast, you consume information, but when you work with us, you can actually practice and change.
We offer coaching and mindfulness experiences, talks, workshops, retreats, and more. Connect with us at themindfulhealerspodcast.com.
The content of this podcast is not medical or life advice. We invite you to participate in the mindful moments we offer at the end of most of our podcasts, but please only do so safely.
Welcome to today's mindful moment. A moment about changing yourself, being willing to look at your own contributions to your loving relationships with kindness and compassion, and inviting the idea that when you change, everything else can change. And that what's getting in the way of frustration, of what's causing frustration and getting in the way of an extraordinary relationship is often simply mindset. And even if there is much more that's getting in the way, you want to shift your mindset first with kindness and compassion and acceptance, letting go of the need to change, bringing in patience, flexibility, and shifting your attention to the good. It's helpful whether you decide to stay or decide to go. And most high achieving women want to feel like they gave it their all before they make a change. So the invitation of this mindfulness practice is to pause and breathe. Send yourself kindness and compassion rather than beating yourself up. And gift yourself some space and some time and some breath so that you can consider what's best for you. How would you like to show up? What would feel best for you? Bring a hand to heart and another hand to top if it's safe to do so, and close your eyes if it's safe to do so, and reconnect to your breath. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Pour the breath in as a delicious gift to every cell in your body. Let it feel amazing. And take a moment to honor the journey, the good and the bad. Honor the you that chose your relationship with hope and excitement and passion. Honor the you that craved loyalty and honesty, and someone who told it like it was, and someone who was practical and was willing to let you shine and willing to support you to shine. Remember those things. Allow that, of course, it's frustrating that your partner is not as efficient and hyperproductive as you. Of course, they're not. Acknowledge that there are many things that do need to be done, and potentially you need help and support. Acknowledge that that help and support may be easier to find than a new partner. Take a moment to appreciate what your partner brings to your life, your relationship. What things do they do that feel good to you? How are they flexible? How do they allow you to have the job that you have? What do they bring to your children, to your life, to your relationship? Do they have a love of music they share with you? Do they have a love of literature that they share with you? Are they very handy at fixing things? They may not be good at vacations, but what are they good at? What is their passion and their special thing, and how does it enhance your life potentially? How might it enhance your children's life? Let yourself be sad, frustrated, grieve that your partner can't be all of the things that you would like them to be. And with this next inhale and exhale, let go of your expectations. Honor who you are and what you bring. Honor who they are and what they bring. Honor this notion that no relationship is perfect. No human is perfect, including you and including them. Letting yourself sit in the muck and the muddiness of all the things and choosing moving forward gracefully, moving forward elegantly, allowing space and compassion for you to be you and them to be them, honoring the ways in which you have both supported each other, even if they might feel lopsided. How would things be if there were two of you? Perhaps some complementary strengths and shared values are okay. Taking a moment with your hand to heart to think about how you might like to move forward. What's one thought you'd like to carry with you? Something to try. Maybe simply practicing mindfulness each day so you can show up as your highest, wisest, most loving, spacious, calm self. Maybe it's simply pausing and breathing. Maybe it's simply being kind to yourself. Stop telling yourself you've made a mistake You made a poor decision. Stop asking yourself unkind, unhelpful questions. Take a moment to enjoy your hand to heart. Take a moment to pause, refill, restore, replenish. Keep yourself off of empty. Let it feel good. Sending yourself some kindness. Sending your partner some kindness. Remembering that just as you are frustrated with them, they might be frustrated with you. Choosing potentially to connect with hope. What might hope look like in your relationship? What do you hope for? Turning your attention to that. And perhaps if you are hoping for connection, show up connecting. If you're hoping for more love, show up loving. If you're hoping for more communication, show up communicating. Not just in the way that makes sense to you, but in a way that makes sense to them. Try one new thing and see what happens. Pressing that hand into the heart space, releasing some oxytocin, taking in a big deep breath. Exhale, let it out. And you can lower hands and open eyes if they're closed. Thank you all so much for practicing with me today. May you all have a happy Valentine's Day. May you all enjoy your love exactly the way it is.